They'll probably hang you, buddy.
You coming, buddy?
Hello, Johnny from Eurogamer here, and this, finally, is a good look at some gameplay from Red Dead Redemption 2. Rockstar dropped a new trailer earlier this week, providing a basic overview of the game before listing off some of the things that have changed for the sequel, and all in all it left us pretty darn impressed. So impressed, in fact, I've lovingly prepared this list of 12 cool new details in Red Dead Redemption 2. First up, this is a fairly obvious point, but oh goodness me, this game is very pretty. From sweeping vistas and blood-red sunsets to the seedier parts of town, Red Dead Redemption 2 is shaping up to be a real visual treat. One of the most impressive things about Red Dead Redemption when it launched all the way back in 2010 was the sense of scale you got from the environment, which, at the time, looked pretty impressive in its own right. Red Dead Redemption 2, however, seems like a big step up, and frankly, I'm looking forward to exploring that game world for myself. A big part of that sense of anticipation, since we're talking about the game world, comes from its variety. There are lush forests like this one with a bear doing its thing and this little critter trying to waddle away without being seen and eaten. There are snowy mountaintops with actual blizzards and satisfying footprints, arid desert scrublands like the ones you'll remember from Red Dead Redemption, homesteads, cities, and then there's an honest-to-goodness swampland with what I am fairly sure is a crocodile and not an alligator. It's got a V-shaped snout and you can see some of its teeth when its jaw is closed, which says crocodile to me, but if you disagree, feel free to in the comments below. Anyway, Red Dead Redemption 2 currently seems to have a more diverse ecosystem, and, as we can see from this bit where some wolves are menacing a bear, it's also an ecosystem that interacts with itself more than we've seen previously. What really interested me though is this bit of the trailer in which Arthur is wading through swamp water. Now, as you'll surely remember, you couldn't swim in Red Dead Redemption, and that much water was pretty much guaranteed to kill John Marston outright. Now, let's not get too excited, nobody is saying this is proof positive that Arthur Morgan will be able to go for a refreshing dip in Red Dead Redemption 2, but he can at least tolerate having wet calves better than his gangmate John, and that is a very encouraging sign. I mean, what if he gets knocked over in this swampland? Will he immediately die of shock? Here's hoping not. Speaking of getting knocked down, the combat system in Red Dead Redemption 2 has been given a hefty upgrade. The trailer makes a big point of this, in fact, as Arthur is unceremoniously thrown through a saloon window and dumped in the street, getting mud all over himself. Shout out to whomever it was at Rockstar that put time into developing butt mud, by the way. Hopefully, for their sake, it wasn't the same person that had to program realistic movement on horse balls. Anyway, as you can see for yourself from this footage, the hand-to-hand combat system seems a lot smoother and a lot more robust than it was in the past, where you were sort of just flailing around with your fists and hoping you'd connect before the other guy landed a punch of his own. Now, grappling has entered the mix, and interestingly, a glance at some of the HUD elements tells us there are also some more options in terms of exactly how you conduct yourself during a brawl. At one point, we see Arthur on top of a man who's clearly come out worse from whatever struggle they were having up to this point. The options presented on screen are choke, presumably to death, dismiss to end the tussle altogether, or beat. Now this, I suspect, is an option to beat somebody unconscious, but it could be beating somebody further into submission, wailing on them until they're finally ready to give up the information you want, for example. Exactly how varied this system will be in terms of hand-to-hand combat remains to be seen, of course, but either way it's good to know that going toe-to-toe with somebody in Red Dead Redemption 2 is a bit more of a sophisticated affair than before. These contextual options aren't just limited to those times when Arthur's trying to feed some poor sap a knuckle sandwich, mind you. They also spill out into the world at large. You can now choose how you greet strangers in the game world, choosing, for example, to say hello, insult them, or even call them out. In some encounters, like this one here, you're explicitly given options to either escalate or resolve a situation. Here we see the options to rob, defuse, or antagonise, each governing how Arthur acts and how the situation plays out. In another part of the trailer, we see Arthur holding a witness to one of his crimes at gunpoint with options to threaten, beat, or dismiss. So now it seems like you can cover your tracks in Red Dead Redemption 2 without having to gun down any witnesses. Unless you want to, of course. It's a more nuanced way of interacting with the world, which is a welcome change. In the first Red Dead Redemption, you were given plenty of opportunities to decide how you wanted to behave, but these invariably amounted to whether or not to draw your gun and shoot somebody dead. The honour system was entirely binary, in other words. And if we ignore this very binary choice of whether to save a man's life or make like Scar from The Lion King and kill him, it seems like there's room in Red Dead Redemption 2 to explore those moral grey areas. The ones between letting somebody off the hook and putting them in the ground, which I'm really pleased about. Granted, it does seem exploring those grey areas mostly involves punching, but it's a refreshing change nonetheless. Talking of gunfights, the trailer makes a big song and dance about weapon fidelity, with reloading and recoil both accurate to the weapons in use at the time. Not being an expert on firearms, I can't really judge the veracity of those claims from what we see in the trailer, but to my eye the in-game shooting does at least seem pretty smooth. Aiming in Deadeye, and especially in normal combat, was often a jerky affair when I first played Red Dead Redemption, and while this is a trailer, and thus it's fair to assume Rockstar is showing us the most polished bit of footage it can, a lot of that jerkiness seems to have disappeared for this latest showing. Deadeye in particular looks very slick, and with more details on the ability promised in the near future, it seems it's had a bit of an overhaul for Red Dead Redemption 2. But life's not all gunfights and fistfights, mind you. There are also the quieter, quainter parts of being a cowboy to consider. We knew from previous trailers and bits of info from Rockstar that the story of Red Dead Redemption 2 involves Dutch van der Linde's gang fleeing across America, and that the game features a camp management system. There's one specific line in this trailer that mentions, quote, each time they're forced to flee an area. Now, moving through different areas as the story progresses is nothing new to an open world Rockstar game, but I'll be interested to see whether camp movement is solely predicated on story progression or whether there'll be additional mechanics in play. In other words, will you only move camp when a story mission requires it, or will there be other factors to consider, like managing the gang's overall heat level, or dealing with greater enemy numbers once things reach a certain point of escalation? It's unclear at this point, but it's fairly safe to assume we can expect a number of camp relocations, some of which will take Arthur, Dutch, and the rest of the gang to some fairly inhospitable places. Talking of the camp itself, the trailer promises a bustling community of interesting characters that you can get to know, unlocking secrets and side missions as rewards for putting in the effort. From the glimpses we saw of the camp, Dutch's gang certainly seems to be varied, so hopefully there'll be a broad range of activities for you to pursue once you're in and amongst them as Arthur Morgan. One of the stranger things it promises is the chance to sit around and share stories with the other camp members. It's pretty weird to be honest, but I'm definitely into it. The gang certainly seems fond of sitting around a campfire, at any rate, as you can see from this shot of the Marston family. There's John, his wife Abigail, and his son post-game. One thing that certainly has me intrigued though is this shot. Is this just a bit of friendly contact, or is romance a possibility in Red Dead Redemption 2? Marston was, of course, a married man in the events of Red Dead Redemption, so no matter how thirsty Bonnie got, developing a relationship was certainly off the cards. It seems Arthur himself might not be so attached for Redemption 2, so we might get to progress certain personal relationships beyond sharing stories around the campfire or a few hands of cards. Poker is definitely back for Red Dead Redemption 2, after all. Thank goodness. The trailer also focuses on hunting, which we already knew about, but there's this one interesting shot that shows Arthur hunting a wounded animal using, and there really is no better way to describe this, Witcher senses. I'm guessing this is just a visualization of Arthur's tracking skills rather than an actual supernatural ability, but either way it seems like you can expect to spend a decent chunk of time stalking things through the wilds of America. Invaluable on your hunting expeditions and indeed in your day-to-day activities in Red Dead Redemption 2, is your horse. We got to hear a bit more about the specific bond you can form with your horse in-game, but also about the different kinds of breeds. Different horses, you see, are useful for different things, and it seems Rockstar is aiming to have a bit more meaningful variation than the different horses available in the previous game, which basically amounted to how hard you could push a horse before it would throw you off. Now, the strength of your bond with a horse determines how skittish it is in high-stress situations like gunfights, which is extremely important when you consider your horse is also used for additional weapon storage. After all, you can't use a shotgun if it's galloping away over the next hill. Undoubtedly the best bit involving a horse in the trailer though is this bit when Arthur shoots somebody dead and their horse clips them as they fall to the ground, immediately turning them into a spinning top. Who knew a horse could put that much spin on a person? Very impressive. And there you have it, 12 cool new details in Red Dead Redemption 2. Hopefully you found this video interesting. If you did, there are plenty more for you to watch, including a recap on the story of Red Dead Redemption, and this video in which I talk about the real-life cowboys I hope inspire some of the figures in the upcoming game. Give one of those a click, do like and subscribe if you feel like it, if not, no pressure. Either way, thank you very much for watching, and have a lovely day.